She cut her boyfriend's head off, drained his body of blood into a bucket. But other than that, she's got good character.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Well, who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
This is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, board-certified criminal defense lawyer with our content genius, coming to you with my Black Hills Gold horseshoe cufflinks. So today we are reacting to Miss Schabusiness. Remember Miss Schabusiness? I'll give you a little breakdown of her case. Remember, she was with her boyfriend, and they had a nice evening at home. Remember when I talked last episode? We talked about having a pizza at home. Well, instead of having a pizza, she decided to chop up her boyfriend and put him in a bucket. Anyway, so she was sorely convicted, obviously. And so we're going to react to her sentencing. But before we get to that, I got a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, this is brought to you by eSign.com. eSign.com is a very effective way to remotely do business. So let's say you are sitting in court and you've got a spit rag over your face, get convicted, and you get sentenced. Well, now you need an appellate lawyer. How do you get an appellate lawyer? Well, you can do it by eSign. If you download the app, you get 3 free signatures a month. You could actually e-sign that to her case agent when she gets to prison. And then all she does is do that, and you e-sign it, you're done. So eSign.com is a very effective way to remotely do business. I use it all the time for all kinds of documents. I use it for power of attorney, for medical releases, to get police reports. I use it all the time for retainer agreements when they can't make it into the office. eSign.com is a very effective way to remotely do business. Because if it's not eSign, no one signs. All right, a couple of housekeeping things. So we have the best fan base on the planet. And you know who you are because you're watching right now. So let's just talk about who these people are because they're just wonderful people. So this is a shout out to Elizabeth Jones from Indianapolis. Now, Elizabeth Jones, you know who you are. Thank you for writing me this beautiful letter. It says, please find enclosed one fan-made saint candle bearing your likeness. Thank you for embracing the fun instead of serving me with a cease and desist for infringement. Congratulations to you and the content genius on your recent milestone. Wishing you both continued success. P.S. I am enclosing a second decal in case the candle gets broken in transit. It can be applied to an ordinary candle. So this is what that's the decal. And this is what she gave me. And I think we put this on our website or on our Instagram. Isn't that hilarious? That is just how sweet is that? So that's that. Both of these things came in today. So we'll set that aside. Put that right there because you can always use a little prayer candle. So then we have another gift today. Look at this. This is just amazing. So here's the thing. No, here's the thing. Literally, here's the thing. This is so cool. Dear Bruce, I found your channel on YouTube a few months ago and became hooked. I'm a super fan of you and the content genius, Michael Rivers. You are both terrific. The combination of funny commentary and serious legal information is a home run. Bruce, I have laughed out loud so many times from what you say. It's been a joy to watch. Anyway, I've been closing something for your desk. One of your great catchphrases. Keep your content coming and you'll have another million soon. That's from Karen Johnson from New Jersey. I almost want to cry. No, but it's really sweet. Really, really sweet. I just can't get over how, you read the comments and everybody is so positive, so, except for the ones that are negative, of course. But most of the people are just so sweet and so amazing. So so she had this made. So here's the thing. So let's get into our reaction today with Miss Schabusiness. I still think that's probably the weirdest name I've ever heard in my life. First of all, you got a packed courtroom, and because it was a fairly high-profile case and a sensational case. And if you remember, she spit. I don't remember who she spit on. She spit on her lawyer or spit on somebody. But she's got a spit hood on her. So they have that on her. So I would assume so she can't spit on anybody. And she's probably handcuffed, I would assume. So let's just, and these are tough because this was a gruesome homicide, just a really, really gruesome homicide.
So, Ms. Schabusiness, this is your opportunity to address me if there's anything on your mind you'd like to say before I pass sentence.
So that comes after the state gives their argument for the sentence they want to impose. The defense then gives their argument as to what sentence. And the only argument that the defense has is that this was, fueled by drugs and, whatever, which is just, even if it was, who the fuck cares? This was such a grisly homicide. But then the defendant has the last word. And they also, I'm sure they did victim impact statements. And those are hard to listen to because you just hear the pain in people's voices, but they're a necessary part of the process, and they need to be heard. But then there's a thing called allocution. The defendant has the last word. They can say whatever they want.
No, there isn't.
Okay. Sentence on cases like this, the court has to consider the factors set forth in State versus Galleon. So I have to consider the gravity of the offense, the character of the defendant, the need to protect the public, as well as other aggravating and mitigating circumstances, including rehabilitative needs and punishment.
Now, I'm not saying, I know she's not available, but that's definitely a woman that would turn my eye.
And deterrence, and then
Probably so much so that she'd pull it right out of the socket.
craft a sentence in each case that's appropriate. In this case, when I consider the defendant's character, I can say that over the course of this case, I've learned a great deal about you, Ms. Schabusiness. First of all, you were born in Chicago, lived there until you were about age 10, 12 rather. You seem to have had a stable childhood. You were loved by your mother and your father and your brother. And unfortunately, your mother passed away when you were 12, your brother passed away in a vehicle accident, and your dad's incarcerated. But I'm confident that all three of them probably still love you very much. Her father's employment was transferred to Green Bay when she was about 12 years old, and hence began the contact Ms. Schabusiness had with this community. She attended Bayport High School. At about 16, she moved to Texas.
So when you do a sentencing like the judge does, you get all kinds of material. You get letters of support, if she had any. You would also get pre-sentence investigation, and that's something that probation prepares. And I think in this case they did a psych eval, and then you go, and then maybe there's some old records, or whatever, and you try to. It's from the defense perspective. This is like next to impossible task. In any other state, this would have been a death penalty case because of the gruesome nature of everything.
Texas to live with her grandfather. She graduated from high school in Cotulla, Texas, and eventually came back to Green Bay because she missed her father and her brother, which again doesn't surprise me any because, as I've indicated, I think they both love her very much. She's worked in this community. I read over the pre-sentence investigation report that I ordered, and that outlines some work experience that she has, and I think that's a favorable character trait because, quite frankly, not everyone that lives in this community does work, and I think it indicates someone who wants to get out and support themselves and not make anybody else do it. But that reflects on character. She has a limited court record. Certainly we have pretty much the entire extent of her criminal record in front of us here today. But it's a limited record that reflects on character.
And a judge has to put on the record, the fact that the judge has reviewed this, and this. But in this case, the judge is being a little too generous in terms of going into her background. This really, I've seen a lot of cases, and I've seen a lot of homicides. Some of them really, really grisly. This definitely takes the cake.
She's got a family who cares about her, and although sometimes I think people take that for granted, if you sit in this courtroom long enough, you'll realize that you should never take your family for granted because so many people come in sitting in that chair in an orange jumpsuit and have absolutely no one who will come in and say, "I'm with her," and that takes a little bit of fortitude to come in and do that. And frankly, today
family support is huge, especially in a case where it's a close call about prison or not prison. This is not a close call.
to Ms. Schabusiness's character, because there's people in this world who find value and worth in her, that they're willing to come in and stand behind her. So I think that reflects on character. I'm cognizant of the fact that she began using drugs at a very young age. Marijuana at age 12, cocaine at around 18, and methamphetamine at around 18 as well. And
So when you go through somebody's life like that, you can see now she's tearing up. You know, she's starting to shake a little bit and she's starting to cry. I'm sure she's going through her life, and how the fuck did I get to this point?
Heard a lot of testimony about drug usage. I don't have any doubt that that has an impact on how people conduct their lives and behave from moment to moment. But quite frankly, as far as this incident and these events go, I think I've spoken to this already in prior hearings, but the fact of the matter is, when I watched the interview with law enforcement shortly after these events, I observed someone who was lucid, understanding what was going on, was tracking what was being asked of her.
When you get there for sentencing, you never know what the judge is going to pick up on. You know, I had a sentencing recently that the client was accused of being all kinds of things. And I never saw any of that in her, you know, and it was like lack of remorse, even though in the pre-sentence investigation she said she felt terrible for the person that died. It is remarkable when you get into something so serious like this.
Answers were tracking. Everything seemed to be together at that moment. I don't really see the influence of drugs now. It doesn't mean it's not there, but I didn't see it in that interview, which is the most close proximity to the events of this night that we have, is that interview. And right then and there, she seemed to be very lucid in what she was doing. But I don't doubt that there's a long history of drug use, serious drug use.
She cut her boyfriend's head off, drained his body of blood into a bucket. But other than that, she's got good character.
Methamphetamine is a plague in this community, and it seeped into this case as well. And it's something that we have to constantly fight against. It's not a battle that the system wins often, but we're making some headway, and every little step we take is perhaps one life that can be saved as a result of that drug coming into this community. But it's a big problem, and it is in this case. I've heard
One of the things you often hear in sentencing like this is a long speech from the judge. So if it seems like it's arduous to sit through, it is when you're sitting, especially when you're in the courtroom.
about Ms. Schabusiness's mental health history. I've read stacks and stacks of mental health records that have come in as recently as a few days ago.
And the whole purpose of doing that is to have a mitigating factor. See, Judge, she's really has been dealing with this mental health issue for a long, long time. Really nothing you can present to the court, nothing you can say to the court to minimize dismembering and chopping up this body and killing especially in the way he was killed. I mean, she choked the shit out of him, and she said she really liked it.
And I read them over, which allowed me to learn even more about Ms. Schabusiness and about her character and who she is as a person. I've heard about her son who lives in Texas, and I'm absolutely convinced that she loves her son.
See, notice she tears up when he talks about her family. You look at her eyes; she get a little squinty, and then she's, that's the pain. But when they talk about the boyfriend and what happened to him, and her conduct, she doesn't cry about that.
And I'm going to say more about that in a minute, but that's a piece of who she is because she's a mom, and I think that is a title that is a precious title, and it's an important title. I'm also convinced that a person comes into this court with their
Mother of the Year this year? Probably not.
life up to that point in time as a demonstration of their character. What kind of a person are they? What do they bring to the table as a member of the human community? Not just this community, but as a community, the human community as a whole. And there are some things about Ms. Schabusiness that speak well of that. I was a little bit put off by a statement that I read in the pre-sentence investigation report, frankly, from her father. He said on page 17 of that report, "I feel like the system could have helped Taylor and kind of failed her as well." And I reflected on that because it's difficult to understand who people refer to when they say the system failed.
Blaming the system for your daughter dismembering her boyfriend. Does that make any fucking sense? You know, don't you have a program that helps people to not dismember? I mean, if Jeffrey Dahmer had that program, there's no program like that. There's no program that says, okay, don't do meth and don't kill people. And I mean, I think it's just common sense to not dismember people, isn't it? Or maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just old-fashioned.
Salespeople. Because you know what? It's not the job of the system to raise people's children. The system tries to do that. The system is
Ooh, Dad, it's your job to teach your kid not to cut their boyfriend's head off and drain their blood into a bucket at the end of the bed.
not perfect. Like our fight against methamphetamine is not perfect, but we carry the fight on. People in our community get into the system, be that the court system or the system dealing with child protection. Really, I think what they're referring to, I don't know, but it seems to be the government. The government needs to come in and do more to take care of people who have gone astray, and I'm not sure that that's the case. Nonetheless, attempts are made. Attempts are being made in this courthouse every day, and to suggest that somehow
Drug addiction is a serious thing. And what the judge is really talking about there is the ongoing battle. And, you know, the system is imperfect, just like, you know, like all of us are imperfect, made of people, right? And so it's very difficult to manage people who don't want to avail themselves of treatment or avail themselves of a clean life or avail themselves of a violent-free life. You know, people have free will, people have decisions that they make, and sometimes law enforcement involvement saves lives. In fact, a lot of times it does. But you can't blame the system for your fucking conduct.
it's the system that failed. It always surprises me a little bit when people come into court. They're coming in an orange jumpsuit and chains to suggest that it's the system that's failed my daughter. There's a certain irony in that. There really is. And it disturbed me when I read that piece. I'm not so sure it's really relevant to what should happen to Miss Schabusiness, but it was relevant.
I just can't get over that name, Schabusiness. Not only that, it looks like she's wearing underwear over her face. But sitting there and listening to this over and over and over again, it's very tough, you know, especially when you're a defense lawyer, because I got nothing to say, and I'm just sitting there pounding against my client.
To what I heard from this witness here today, because I think the system does the best it can. It's imperfect, and it has very much to do with the amount of resources that the public wants to put into the system, and those resources are finite. I heard from Ms. Schabusiness's father. He is coming in here to talk about his daughter, who's also going through the system, and I couldn't help but think of everything I heard about Ms. Schabusiness's son. And so anyways, I reflect on that. But I'm also convinced that, you know, no one is responsible for where they come from. But you are responsible for where you're going.
That is actually a very poignant statement. You're not responsible for where you came from because you didn't ask to be born, and you didn't have any control over the parents that you have. But you do have control over your destiny. You have control over where you're going tomorrow. And if you think tomorrow, you know, your future holds the fact that you just sliced off your boyfriend's head and, you know, dismembered his body, well, you were in control of your actions. It's just tragic that the young man lost his life that way. And then now she's losing hers.
So there's a lot of tragedy that has occurred in Ms. Schabusiness's life. There really is. I've already reflected on some of that. And it almost seems as if you could...
And whenever somebody who's been abused is the abuser. You know, you think, oh, it's just a cycle, blah, blah, blah. You know, oftentimes a judge will say, nobody knows better how something should not be than somebody that's been abused. Like, for example, me. When I was a kid, my dad used to beat the shit out of me all the time. All the time. I fucking hated it. If you are in that category, guess what? You're in the best position to change it, to stop the cycle, to make sure that it doesn't happen to your kids.
You could apply the phrase, she never had a chance, to Miss Schabusiness. But as I said, you're not responsible for where you come from, but you are responsible for the choices you make about where you're going. And Miss Schabusiness has got to be held responsible for that, and this is the ending of a process that is doing just that. At the same time, I'm absolutely convinced that irrespective of the sentence that Ms. Schabusiness gets, which in light of these charges is going to be a life sentence, every human being has the ability to move forward and find meaning in their life, and Ms. Schabusiness has that opportunity, just like anybody else in this courtroom. She has the ability to do that, and I certainly hope that for her. But all of those things I reflect on when I consider the character of this defendant. Next, I move on to the gravity of the offense. And I sit in this chair.
The gravity, it doesn't get any more grave.
Often, and I address situations where people have been have lost their lives, or people have been violated terribly, and I always indicate that really the offense in this case can't be overstated, and that seems very appropriate to say that in most cases. When there's been such a death or a violation, but in this case it seems different.
Sometimes there are mitigating factors. I was a battered wife. Sometimes I was on drugs or acting in self-defense, and really I went overboard. This doesn't have any of those. She killed him out of she was liking it. Remember she choked the shit out of him and he died, and then she chopped him up.
In this case, you seem to run out of superlatives when describing what happened in this case. You really do. The list of superlatives don't seem to measure up to what you see and what you hear about, and what we heard about in the trial. This crime offends human decency, it offends human dignity, and it offends the human community. It really does. When someone loses their life needlessly, it's tragic. It really is. It's tragic for family and friends and community. When life is taken from a person in the fashion that it was in this case, where the victim's remains are cut up and packaged in containers, it's difficult to identify a human nature in those activities.
It's like, what? Did you see her brow? What? Packaged up and put in containers? I thought I ate them all.
It really is. It's very troubling.
Remember, I think she had a foot in the car, I mean, Jesus Christ.
It's difficult to recognize the general belonging that most people have for their community. It's difficult to recognize community in anything that happened in this case. This is a small community that we live in, where the web of relationships almost encompass everyone who lives here, such that people look out for each other and care when something bad happens to.
Tough to have a sentencing in a small town like this. Tough for a judge to not be harsh.
To one of our members, and in a broader sense, the community we exist in is the human community, as I've reflected on, and these actions are foreign to all of that community. And they shock the community beyond the ability to adequately express in words. They really do. And that's the gravity of this offense. That is the gravity of this offense. There aren't superlatives for it. There aren't really words for it. You can get a sense of it. You can get a sense of it and a feel for it, but there's no really way to express the gravity of this offense. So the need to protect the public is an important factor the court needs to struggle with as well. And in light of what I've just indicated.
Federally, there's a thing called 3553A, Those are whole, like, I think it's like 18 factors.
The need to protect the public.
You think there's a need to protect the public here for somebody that's willing to do this? You know what? Let's give her probation. We haven't tried probation. I mean, she only did it once.
Is an important factor the court needs to struggle with as well. And in light of what I've just indicated, I think it's plain that there is a need to protect the public in this case.
No shit. She's just, she did all kinds of crap in court. We'll show you that here. In some of the pretrial hearings. I mean, she was just a wild cannon. I mean, you don't know what the fuck's going to happen to her. If you remember, she attacked her flipping lawyer.
As I said, this behavior seems so removed from the human community as to be unpredictable. It really is.
Yeah, we never know when you're just going to just go off and dismember somebody after you kill them.
In a place where this kind of an offense, kind of actions, kind of a crime is possible, with no advanced warning signs, and absolutely anything's possible then. Where this kind of a thing is possible, absolutely anything is possible. And from that, the public needs protection. They really do. I've outlined, what I think are aggravating circumstances in this case. There are mitigating circumstances, as I've said. There's things about Ms. Schabusiness regarding her upbringing and what brought her here, the struggles she's had with some mental health issues, and struggling perhaps in the context of those issues.
So you have, in any sentencing, you have aggravating and mitigating circumstances. Sometimes there are no aggravating circumstances, and sometimes there are no mitigating. But aggravating, obviously, that makes it worse. Mitigating are, what are, your background, different things that's find it, oh, this is why this happened. She never got a chance in life, that kind of thing. But there's no mitigating circumstance under any circumstances in this case that would lessen her sentence.
With a family who wasn't always as present as they could have been, those are mitigating sets of.
I'll bet you her lawyer's really fucking glad this case is over.
So when I consider what is an appropriate sentence, first, I think the law requires that I at least look at least some of these cases. Take a look at probationary sentences. Those aren't appropriate. They would diminish the severity of the offense.
Yeah, let's give her probation. Probation. I think, let's just give her a second chance. Not going to happen.
But at this time,
all you have to do to think about whether a second chance is necessary is watch the cop's face when he finds that head in the bucket. Fucking A.
Given all the factors that I have to consider, it's the decision of this court and the judgment of the law that Ms. Schabusiness be sentenced as follows. As to in 22 CF 363, count 1, that's the first-degree intentional homicide as a repeater. It's a Class A felony. I'm going to impose life imprisonment without the possibility of extended supervision. I believe that's appropriate in light of the findings that I've already made. As far as count 2, mutilation of a corpse as a repeater, a Class F felony, I'm going to.
Now, sometimes when you have a title of an offense, it can be very descriptive. Mutilation of a corpse sounds like something you'd find on Halloween. But it's sort of academic because, she's getting life without parole. And some people might ask, well, why do they even bother with that? Just because they want all the conduct to be accounted for.
Adopt the recommendation of the pre-sentence investigation writer, 7.5 years of initial confinement followed by 4 years of extended supervision. That'll be consecutive to count 1.
So that, which means if by some hook or crook the legislature changes things and she gets out early, that sentence is added on top of the life.
As far as count 3, third-degree sexual assault as a repeater, Class G felony, I'm going to impose 3 years of initial confinement followed by 4 years of extended supervision. That will be consecutive to count 2 and count.
Again, academic because she got life without.
1. As far as the revocation cases, I'm going to impose 1 year of incarceration on each of those counts. Those will run concurrent to the other offenses. I've reviewed, as I've indicated, reviewed both of the pre-sentence investigation reports. There's certainly value. I'm going to, as conditions of supervision, I'm going to require no contact with the victim's family, maintain absolute sobriety, complete SOT assessment and treatment follow-through, obtain and maintain full-time employment.
We don't need to watch the rest of that because it's just more of the same. But you get the flavor for what a very serious sentencing is like. We didn't hear the arguments from the parties. I just wanted you to hear, the judge's commentary, because the judge is supposed to be dispassionate, and I thought he was in this case. But you got to sit there and listen to that, and you got to take it all in. Your decision that night ended your life as you knew it. And keep in mind, nobody's an island. We live in a society, where we have neighbors, where we have somebody at Starbucks, somebody, whenever we do something fucking crazy like this, it affects a lot of people. It affects, the mom and dad of this kid. It affects the kid, obviously, but it affects her family too. And everything we do has some kind of ripple effect. So, and this is lost on the very young, because they don't see tomorrow, they don't see consequences until they happen to them. Young people tend to be, they don't have perspective. So when you're doing something, if you're out drinking with your buddies and you get behind the wheel of a car and all of a sudden you fucking kill somebody, that whole event could have been taken care of with a little forethought. Oh fuck, I've had a couple drinks, let's Uber it home. Or I'm so fucking pissed at her, I just want to choke her to death, Don't. Go for a fucking walk. I really am shocked by this. Her conduct in this case was so crazy. It really was serial killer-ish. And she killed him for her own pleasure. And then she was horrible at covering it up. So, remember, there are consequences to our actions. Do what you can do to make sure that you and the people around you are appreciated and cared for. We'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I'm Bruce Rivers, board-certified criminal defense lawyer with our content genius, Michael Rivers. Make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, sign up for Patreon, and we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. 23-hour lockdown, please, is that my God?